Well, Jimmy Kimmel is returning to late-night television, but not everyone will be able to watch him.
In total, 71 ABC-affiliated stations across the country say they won't carry the show, and that includes 38 Sinclair-owned affiliates and 33 Nexstar-owned affiliates. The move means large portions of Kimmel's audience will be cut off just as he comes back on the air.
Let's briefly recap the 7 days of the James Christian Kimmel saga of 2025, which, as we know, has quickly taken its rightful place among the most significant sagas in the history of Western civilization, a saga that will stand alongside the Icelandic sagas and the Norse sagas, the Lord of the Rings saga, the Saga of Ice and Fire, the Skywalker saga. Okay, maybe not that last one. The point being, last Monday, Jimmy Kimmel comes out and, in that uniquely smug, smarmy way of his, declares that Charlie Kirk's murder was a right-wing conservative operation. On Tuesday, lots of people call up their local ABC affiliates and the FCC to complain about it. On Wednesday morning on the Benny Johnson Show, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr remarks that it's against the law to use the public airwaves to make verifiably false factual claims, and the ABC television network would do well to address the matter internally, or the federal government might be impelled to fulfill its statutory duty of enforcing the Communications Act of 1934. Early Wednesday afternoon, ABC's two biggest affiliate groups, Nexstar and Sinclair, announce, look, the network can do what it wants, but we're not putting this lying asshole on the air in our local markets anymore. Late Wednesday afternoon, ABC announces that they are suspending production on The Kimmel Show. Then we get 4 days of woke celebrity freakouts, fake news performance artist freakouts, elected Democrat freakouts, and in a few cases, elected Republican freakouts, and for good measure, a couple of left-wing terrorists fire bullets through the windows of the offices of their local ABC stations. And while it used to be a matter of American civic orthodoxy that we don't negotiate with terrorists, apparently the company culture at ABC is to give the terrorists whatever they want and beg them not to kill us. So on Monday morning this week, ABC announces The Kimmel Show is returning to the airwaves on Tuesday. On Monday afternoon, Nexstar and Sinclair reaffirm their previous position that the network can do what it wants, but we're not putting that lying asshole on the air in our local markets anymore. And so last night, Jimmy Kimmel Live made its semi-triumphant return on about a third fewer stations than it was on before, which I'm sure is going to do wonders for that 0.16 average nightly rating. And how did the host respond to the events of the prior week? Well, the same way wokesters always do. Shift the blame, falsely frame, lather, rinse, repeat. It's Wednesday, the 24th of September. This is Curmudgeon's Corner. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where the carrier pigeons have threatened to go on strike if I don't stop making so many cruel jokes about the avian community. Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to Curmudgeon's Corner. Let's talk about YouTube. Specifically, let's talk about YouTube 5 years ago. You see, 5 years ago, September of 2020, was when this channel first went live, and the country was already in the thick of the China virus madness. And speaking of madness, I'd like to digress for just a moment and share a brief anecdote that I have shared before, but it's been quite a while, so I am going to share it again. When I first signed up for YouTube, which would have been June of 2020, a few months before I started actually making videos, you know what the first email communication was that I received from YouTube? It was the July 2020 Creator Newsletter. And you know what the July 2020 Creator Newsletter was about? Drag queens. The rich history of drag queens. The ways in which drag queens make our society at large a more vibrant and more diverse place. All the different ways in which you, the YouTube creator, can celebrate drag queens in your videos. In fact, wouldn't it just be a hoot if you made some videos while in drag yourself? It was basically a big coded message saying, look, if you start making drag queen content, we will strap a rocket to your back and push your channel straight to the moon. For me, it was a valuable first look into what kind of a company YouTube is in terms of its political orientation and the types of content that they seek to promote and conversely to not promote. By September, when I started making the first episodes of the Captain Curmudgeon program, we were, as I mentioned, already in the thick of the China virus and its associated madness. Some states, mostly the ones run by Democrats, had already gone completely insane with mask mandates and social distancing and school shutdowns and closures of parks and beaches. At the federal level, we had Tony Fauci running around acting like Tony Fauci, because of course we did. We had Rochelle Walensky's CDC putting out a lot of stupid cartoons and a lot of shockingly unscientific advisories. And you remember what that all looked like. You should avoid getting together with your family because you will probably die. But if you're going to go burn and loot a city in the name of racial justice, then go right ahead. You'll be fine. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump, in what turned out to be the waning days of his first administration, was doing his best to rein in these public health maniacs, though often without much success. And I persist in my belief that not firing people like Walensky and Fauci and Deborah Birx, even when it was abundantly obvious that they were Democrat Party operators, was the biggest mistake of his first term and did much to cost him his re-election. But on YouTube, and across the social media ecosphere more broadly, you could still more or less say whatever you wanted to say about these matters. I mean, sure, they would drop that stupid blue advisory box below your video if you said something that ran afoul of the official guidance of the CDC or the WHO or what have you. But nobody was getting strikes and suspensions over it. Nobody was getting their channel pulled down over it. But that all changed in a big damn hurry in January of 2021 when the Biden gang took over. And it's easy to see now that they were more hostile to the free speech rights of normal Americans than any peacetime administration in our nation's history, and arguably, even a couple of the wartime administrations. On YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and elsewhere, the bloodbath began almost immediately. People had to start taking great care with the words they used and the things they talked about. If you didn't toe the political line and say only things the Biden administration approved of, if you openly questioned their quite often nonsensical public health guidelines and diktats, you were not getting away scot-free. You could expect your videos to be pulled down, to have strikes and suspensions assessed against your channel, or to have them deleted entirely. And we always kind of knew this had to be because the Biden administration was exerting pressure on the social media companies and the video sharing platforms behind the scenes, demanding brute force censorship of all dissenting views because what else could the explanation have been? But we never had any official confirmation of those suspicions until yesterday, when Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Alphabet Incorporated, parent company of Google, admitted in a letter to the House Oversight Committee that yes, all of these coordinated attacks on the free speech rights of American citizens were done at the direct behest of the Joe Biden administration. Because nothing says I love the Constitution and the Bill of Rights like using the organs of the central government to forcibly silence all of your enemies and all of your critics because you do not like what they're saying about you. Mr. Pichai now claims, and I don't know about you, but I will believe it when I see it, that all channels that were pulled down due to claims about the China virus and also any election integrity claims related to the 2020 presidential race will now be restored. And if it's true, that's certainly a good thing, but it's also far too little, far too late, because where do those creators go to get back the income of which they were deprived when they were deplatformed under false and brazenly illegal pretenses? I suspect there may be a humdinger of a class action lawsuit forthcoming on that front, and you can bet that Joe Biden himself will be one of the named defendants. But as much as Mr. Pichai might hope otherwise, this is not the end of the difficult questions that he and other big tech social media CEOs are going to have to answer when they are hauled before House Oversight in 2 weeks from yesterday. Because if I'm Jim Comer or Jim Jordan, here's what my line of questioning is going to be. When your companies received these takedown requests from the various organs of the Joe Biden central government, it would seem to beggar belief that you didn't know perfectly well they were asking you to take actions that were illegal and unconstitutional and hostile to the most basic principles of the founding of the American Republic. So why did you choose to do it anyway? Why didn't you tell them to go straight to hell? Why didn't you stand up for the right of your users and creators to engage in constitutionally protected speech that was critical of the government? Did you do it because you feared further reprisals upon your company from the Joe Biden administration if you failed to comply? Or did you do it because these requests were coming from your own political fellow travelers and you fully agreed with the censorship regime that they sought to impose? It has to be one of those two things, and either way, somebody's got a lot of splaining to do. If it's the former, then there were a lot of rogue actors in the Joe Biden administration who shouldn't just be subject to civil liability, but should also be indicted and criminally tried to the fullest extent of the law, because you can't just piss all over the protected speech rights of the American people and enjoy total impunity. If it's the latter, then congratulations, you guys get to also be tried as criminal co-conspirators, since you were more than happy to jump in the car with those rogue government actors and crush the types of speech that you think ought to be crushed. Which is, frankly, exactly what this reporter would expect from a company whose culture permits a creator newsletter to be sent out that promotes and incentivizes the creation of pro-drag queen videos. I'm done. That's all I've got. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Get off my lawn.